Chapter 25. My second worst mistake. I love women, but damn it if relationships haven't kicked my ass. In March 2014, Mindy Kaling was a guest on the show. Danny Brand, who was like a kid sister to Jimmy and is the daughter of the Stress Factory Comedy Club owner, was a fan of Mindy and came to the studio to see the interview. Danny and I had met a couple of times prior to this throughout the years, starting back when she was in high school. She was around 26 at the time. During the interview with Mindy, Danny and I would exchange glances. After the show, I asked for her number, and soon after, we hit the town for some drinks. One thing led to another, and we started to hook up. As I mentioned, at this time in my life, I wasn't looking for a steady relationship. Danny certainly wasn't my girlfriend. I wasn't looking for her to be faithful to me, and I didn't expect to be faithful to her. When I started doing the internet show after I was fired from Sirius, she would be at my house, and my staff and Danny didn't get along at all. She wouldn't shut the fuck up and would come down to the basement during my show making all kinds of noise. She'd purposely be distracting by moving things and coming up to the glass of the sound studio. She would even fuck with my guests while they were being interviewed. She was extremely volatile and knew how to push buttons. Keith practically wanted to kill her, and his wife, Angela, couldn't stand her. It got to the point where Keith asked me to make sure Danny didn't even come downstairs while we were taping. I then told her, "You can't come down when we're taping the show." Danny's typical reaction was, "Fuck that, fuck you, and fuck your show." A real princess. It was constantly like this with her. I should have known better, but believe it or not, it went on like this for a while. We were off again, on again, until we finally agreed to call it quits. It was September 2015 when I officially told her she needed to leave me in my house. I'd had enough of her bullshit and needed her out of my life. At this point, everyone knew I had grown to hate her. Danny started crying. "I have nowhere to go." I said, "All right, you can stay at my apartment in Manhattan until you find a place." Even though she'd be staying at my place, I made it very clear to her that we were no longer dating. Thanksgiving rolled around, and she was still living at my apartment. I didn't really care because, out of sight, out of mind. She called me up during the holiday season and said, "My family hates me and I got nowhere to go." I said, "All right, you can come to my aunt and uncle's with me for Thanksgiving." I felt bad for her, the dumb fuck that I am. Even Thanksgiving night we fought, and I sent her right back to the apartment. Then came December, and she was still living rent-free in my apartment. She asked, "Do you want to go out for dinner?" I was thinking, all right, why not? Completely plutonic, what's the harm? We went out to dinner on Long Island and back to my house in Roslyn. She just went into crazy beast mode saying, "Who's the girl on the phone? Who are you fucking now?" Just pushing buttons again. I was trying to de-escalate, but found myself yelling at her in response to her constant badgering. I needed to cool the situation down. I told Danny that she had to go back to my apartment. I dialed the car service to come pick her up and take her back to the city. The car showed up and she said, "I'm not going anywhere." I was now begging her to leave the house. If I knew then what I know now, I would have jumped in that car and gone to my apartment to sleep. The car service driver was asking me, "What's going on?" He must have been sitting outside my home for already 15 minutes, and I had to pay him just to drive away empty. Danny just wouldn't leave the fucking house. She kept going on, questioning me. "Who are you fucking? Let me see your phone." She started grabbing my phone. She began streaming our arguments over the internet on Periscope to a social media audience. Now we were just screaming at each other. The cops showed up at my house. At this point, nothing had been done except for her showing shit. I told them, "There's no problem here, other than she's a little twisted. We're okay." The police then left. Danny started kicking things into high gear. She was obsessed with seeing my phone to see who I'd been texting. She then pulled my phone from my hand and smashed it on the floor. I reciprocated by smashing her phone, but not before she tried to incriminate me by fabricating my slapping her. You can clearly see her own hand hitting herself and saying, "Stop hitting me." You can hear, what about her hand, Anthony? You can hear me from the kitchen saying, "I'm not hitting you." So that went out on Periscope. I did not and would not hit her or any female. I came into the living room and told her to say that I hadn't been hitting her. She then slapped me on my ear with an open hand. It caused a loud ringing sound that hurt like a motherfucker. I instantly retorted by biting her hand between her thumb and her pointer finger. I didn't break the skin, it was just hard enough to make a bruise. She wanted to run to the neighbor's house to call the police. I was trying to call the car service again because I wanted her out. She started pulling the landline phone wires out of the wall, drunk off her ass, vindictive, rejected, and just insane. I didn't want her running through the neighborhood drunk. I also didn't want the police coming back and possibly arresting me based on her false allegations. I just wanted this to settle down. She ran out of my house, and there was little I can do. My surveillance cameras caught all of the outside action. She later said in the police report that I had grabbed her by the hair and dragged her back into the house. This clearly wasn't the case. This went on for literally hours. Then it was morning, with the sun coming up, and I said, "Let's get in the truck and go to the Apple store. I'll buy 2 new phones and we'll call this a fucking day. You can go back to the apartment and that's it." Again, "Fuck this, fuck you." I told her, "Well, I'm going to the Apple store and you could stay here." Another false allegation she made was that I didn't let her leave my home on her own. Really? I was begging her to leave. Meanwhile, in reality, I was walking out the door by myself to get a new phone, and she came running out and jumped into my truck. Hey, who doesn't want a new iPhone? Once again, this was all verified by my outside video surveillance cameras. We went to the Apple store and bought 2 new phones. There was no pleading for her life at the store. No, this man is beating me and holding me hostage in his house. The only words out of her mouth were, "I think we should get cases and more storage space." We got back into the car and drove back to the house. Welcoming me home were 4 cop cars and 8 officers waiting for us. Clueless me. I was looking at this and thinking, I wonder what's going on. What is this about? I got out of the car and one cop asked me, "Where were you? Was there a fight? Did you hit each other?" A female officer whisked Danny away to speak with her inside the house. I was talking to the other cops on my porch. 15 minutes later, the female cop came out with Danny, and they walked right by us and got into the police car. A male officer came over to me and said, "Turn around, you're under arrest." Whatever was discussed inside my house was enough to get me arrested. She showed the bruise on her hand and said that I had stomped on her hand while she was on the ground. She also stated that I had kicked her in the ribs. Okay, Chester. And strangled her. I'm sorry. Sorry to laugh at this. And strangled her against the door. I was thinking, what the fuck? This was beyond me. I felt like I was in some kind of bizarro world where strange fiction was becoming reality. I was hauled away in cuffs because this fucking bitch had said I had done her harm, never mentioning that she had hit me on the side of my head, kicked me, and pulled my hair during the course of the night when I had desperately been pleading for her to go to my apartment that I was letting her stay at rent-free. She then went right back to my apartment and stayed there another 5 months. I couldn't throw her out at that point, if you can believe it. I wanted to see the video for my surveillance cameras. Keith told me the cops took the hard drive. There were a bunch of wires in my basement that used to be screwed into a hard drive, and now there was no hard drive. The police said, "We don't have it. No one has it." The district attorney assigned to my case was a man-hating woman who was actually fired for withholding evidence on a domestic abuse case a couple of months after my case was settled. My surveillance footage would have proven that Danny was lying, and it disappeared. Coincidence? Of course not. Coincidence that this same lady was fired a couple of months later for doing the same thing to another poor bastard? Do the math. It was the biggest fucking I've gotten since my divorce case. Anytime I step into a court, it's going to be a big ass fucking for me. I settled for a harassment violation, which is essentially a ticket. But all of my guns were taken away and my pistol permit was revoked. I lost my Second Amendment right when some girl made bullshit allegations against me. That's for 2 years. Then after 2 years, I have to start all over again, trying to convince people that I'm competent to bear arms. I'm a gun enthusiast. I like target shooting and collecting. This was all taken away because some insecure chick felt vindictive about my being done with her. I've heard she has moved to San Diego. A different country would be better, but I'll take it. I decided to settle my case and take a plea bargain. I could have gone to trial and won. There was also a chance I could have lost and gone to jail. Even though I was innocent, I wasn't going to risk it. It gave me an honest look at how our legal system really works, and it has nothing to do with justice. It's all about the money. Part of my plea bargain was that I had to attend a domestic abuse course and then rehab for alcohol. I started with the domestic abuse class, which was in Jericho, Long Island. I met privately with a woman in her office. She would put a videotape into the VCR that showed the proper way to handle domestic situations. Some of them were hilarious. I literally had to bite my tongue to curtail my laughter. These videos showed what was not the right way to relate to or treat women by showing footage of Andrew Dice Clay's act and a segment of film featuring Artie Lang. It's not good when you're watching a video of what not to do with women and your friends are the actual people used as the examples. She knew who I was and what I did for a living. I was doing my show one day and the next day I went in for my class. I noticed she was very cold to me. She sat me down and said, "I don't know if I can treat you anymore." I was like, "What happened? I need this. I can't get thrown out of the course." She said, "I watched your show yesterday and you said something about when rape isn't rape." I'm thinking, of all the fucking breaks she had to hear this show. I said, "There's rapey rape and rapity rape rape. See, there's rapey rape when a guy crawls through a window and beats a girl up, then he rapes her. The girl's like, 'Oh my god, who was that?' They call the police. Then there's rapity rape rape, which is when a friend comes over and maybe you regret it the next day. You call it rape, but it's more regret." This woman was livid. To her, if I were to say, "That's a nice dress you're wearing," that would be just about rape. I now had to convince her that this was just a show and it was a bit, that it wasn't really me. Do you think I would really say something like that? It's show business. Seinfeld was named after Jerry Seinfeld, but that isn't Jerry Seinfeld on the show, it's a character he's playing. On the Anthony Cumia show, I'm playing a character. I was dancing like a motherfucker trying to convince this woman to continue working with me. "You're really helping me. I've come so far." For the next month, I really had to watch what I said on my show. I knew that at any moment she could be listening, and that one thing I said could have been the one that got me thrown out of the class. Getting thrown out of a court-appointed domestic violence class is never good. I'd say by the second week, I stopped fantasizing about smacking the shit out of my teacher. Kidding. It worked out well, and she gave me exemplary marks, and I left with no marks. Or I left her with no marks. I guess the class really did work. Chapter 26. Rehab. I had to go to a 30-day rehab, which really infuriated me. I actually volunteered to go because my lawyer said, "If you volunteer, it looks a lot better than if it's court-appointed." I originally thought it would be a class similar to the domestic violence one I had just finished. I'd go twice a week and that would be it. Little did I know I'd be going to Fort Lauderdale, Florida for a fucking month. Under grave protest, I went. I didn't drink for 4 days prior to flying out there. I actually watched rehab movies like 28 Days and Clean and Sober to prep. I never had been to rehab and didn't know what the fuck it would entail. I knew I didn't have a drinking problem. It wasn't drinking that had gotten me into this situation. Perhaps I would have made better decisions if I hadn't been drinking that night. It was being a dummy and feeling sorry for a lying piece of shit that had gotten me into the situation I was currently in. When I first got there, I had to go to the detox center for 3 or 4 days. I don't drink enough even on a binge to warrant detoxing, and I already hadn't had a drink in 4 days. This place was filled with hardcore drug addicts and alcoholics who were going through some serious DTs. They told me I'd have to be medicated twice a day and I'd have to go up to the window where they distribute medication. Medication? What the fuck? I went to the window and said, "I'm supposed to get medicine? What is this?" They said Xanax. "When you're coming off alcohol, we don't want you to have a seizure, so we give you Xanax." I told them, "I don't need anything, I'm fine. I haven't drank in 4 days. Even before that, I wasn't drinking a lot." "Nope, you have to take them. It's the law," they told me. I said, "All right, give me it." I popped the Xanax, and 10 minutes later, I was on the couch in the day room, completely fucked up on a different planet. My eyes were at half-mast, my mouth was hanging open, and I was humming. The Xanax buzz was awesome. I was feeling great. I was sitting there thinking, this is my first day in rehab? This makes no sense to me at all. I come here completely sober, and now I'm wasted on Xanax. Maybe I was wrong about rehab. I had 4 days of this, and then they shipped me off to the rehab center. It was April and 85 degrees down there. The place had a pool and was right on the beach. It was fucking amazing. After 3 days, they made me president of the group. I was the one who handed out the work details to the other patients. I never had to do anything. I never lifted a finger, and I'd never been president of anything before this. They would give everyone multiple assignments every day, but I had to do only one. I'd see people with books working things out. I only had to show the differences between me and the on-air me, how I presented myself to people in real life and how I presented myself to my audience in real life. I was generous, kind, and taciturn. The on-air me was an asshole, brutal, and misogynistic. It was like I was 5 years old and turning in my school project. And that's all I turned in. I spent the rest of my time in the pool flirting with the girls, eating and smoking a vape. To fit in at rehab, you have to have smoke coming out of your face. Everyone smoked cigarettes there. It ended up being kind of fun. Some people would leave and the new drunks and addicts would replace them. It was an interesting stay. Artie had gone to the same rehab and recommended it. Artie Lang recommending a rehab facility is like Gordon Ramsay recommending a new restaurant. You're going to listen. I had a roommate while I was there. My first roommate was a by-the-book kind of patient, a hardcore alcoholic who could have blackouts and murder someone without knowing it. Perfect. Just the guy I wanted to sleep next to me. The next roommate was great. He was a heroin addict from Oklahoma who shared my same sick sense of humor. He and I ran that place. I would take nightly trips to AA meetings. I literally had 30 AA meetings. I would just sit there, pissed, looking at the signs that said things like, one day at a time. I never felt like I belonged there and couldn't jibe with the program. People would get up, tell their stories, and I'd be thinking, I don't even have one of these. Step number 1 is realizing that you have a problem and that your life is out of control because of alcohol. I was like, no. I've had some out of control moments because of booze. Maybe I wasn't thinking at the time. I'm not going to say my life is out of control. My life is pretty good. I would then see these people telling stories such as, I dropped a gallon of vodka on the bathroom floor and I sucked it up with a straw. Yeah, that's not me. I served my 30 days and didn't care that there was any booze or beer. It didn't bother me. Someone drove me to the airport and said the obligatory stuff, if you need anything, here's my number. Make sure you get to meetings and get a sponsor. We're going to text you and check in. I said, thank you. I then proceeded to walk into the airport and directly to the President's Club and ordered a beer. I popped the top on an ice cold bud and I saw the little bit of vapor that comes out when you crack it open. I blew it off. I wanted it to be great, and it was. It was one of the best beers I ever had. The whole plane ride back, I was indulging in Bloody Marys. I came back to LaGuardia Airport from my month in rehab hammered. Mission accomplished. Chapter 27. Look at my wiener. It was the summer of 2011, and I was a guest on the Fox News show Red Eye hosted by Greg Gutfeld. After the show, Greg and I, along with the other guests on the panel and the show's producers, went out to a bar called Langan's on 47th Street. The guys who work at these news talk shows know how to fucking drink. I've never seen people in any industry who drink more than these guys. Possibly Wall Street suits, but media guys are right there. Greg told me Ann Coulter is on her way down with Andrew Breitbart. I had never met Andrew before and was excited. At this time, Andrew was the only guy aside from Weiner to possess the infamous Weiner picture. The news had been showing pictures of Anthony Weiner flexing in a mirror that he had accidentally set out over Twitter and then quickly deleted. The money shot was this dick pic. Everyone was like, where is the dick pic? Does anyone have the dick pic? Andrew Breitbart had it on his phone, and he couldn't show it to enough people. He was showing this dick pic to everybody. All I was thinking was, how can I get publicity for the Opie and Anthony show with this picture? I asked Andrew if he could come on our show the next day, and he agreed to it. The next morning, he was at our studio. Andrew was a staunch conservative, a right-wing leaning guy. Our other guest that day was the actor Vincent D'Onofrio, oh my god, I remember this, who is a bleeding heart liberal. The two had never met but knew each other by reputation and knew they had polar opposite political views. They hated each other. That added a great dynamic to the show as well. Andrew sat down and they were cordial, but they took little snips at each other's political ideologies. We then started talking to Andrew about the Anthony Weiner dick pic. Understand, this was the story that everyone was buzzing about, the hottest topic on every talk show and news program at the time. Andrew started to pass his phone around the room for everyone to see. Again, he just couldn't show this to enough people. This was his check it out, I have this and no one else does kind of thing. I had my video conferencing Pal Talk on live as I did every show. The Pal Talk camera was on me, and as the phone was going around, I looked at the picture and started laughing. It was then my turn to pass it to Opie. I turned Andrew's phone around so that the picture was facing the Pal Talk camera that was normally capturing me doing the show. I purposely held it there for a little while, knowing that everyone watching was screen capturing this image and getting the dick picture of Anthony Weiner. I then passed Opie the phone and made its way back to Andrew. After the show, I noticed that everyone was posting their screen cap image. People were now texting it to me. I now had the Anthony Weiner dick pic. Opie and I both put the picture out there on social media with our names firmly attached to it. The news broke and stations everywhere started showing the picture. Obviously, it had to be pixelated, but nonetheless, it was everywhere with our names attached. We received major publicity because of this, which was exactly the plan. Andrew Breitbart texted me, and he was fucking pissed. This was his baby, he said. I can't believe you betrayed my trust like that. I needed to have that picture to get other things. He asked why I'd done it. I texted back, I'm sorry. It makes me think of that story about the scorpion and the frog. The frog needs to get across the river, and the scorpion asks for a ride. The frog's like, you're not going to sting me, right? The scorpion's like, no, why would I sting you? Then we'd both drown. All right, get on. And they go across the river. In the middle of the river, the scorpion stings the frog, and the frog asks, why the fuck did you do that? Now we're both going to die. Because I'm a scorpion. That's what I do. Because I'm a radio guy. That's why I did it, for radio personalities. Publicity is the #1 goal. Getting more people to hear your name, regardless of what it's attached to, is your goal on a daily basis. Getting them to talk about you, even the worst firing catastrophes Opie and I had, our first thought was, cool, we got some press. I felt bad about what I did to Andrew. At the same time, I was thinking, you were the one who handed it to us. It was a shitty thing to do, but again, I had the shock jock mindset. I was a scorpion. I don't even know if Andrew Weiner knew or realized we were the ones who released the photo publicly. A couple of years ago, Keith the Cop, my executive producer, had a meeting with Weiner. We considered having him join our compound media company and giving him his own show. They had a good meeting, which turned into a second meeting with Keith and me. This took place during a presidential campaign. Weiner was all over the news because of the Hillary Clinton emails that had ended up on his computer. He walked into the restaurant incognito with a hat and sunglasses on. It was pretty hilarious that years after the dick pic, he was now interviewing me with hoping to do a show. He was really nice, and I certainly didn't mention anything regarding the infamous photo. I'm not sure to this day whether he knows I was the one who leaked the image that was the catalyst for his downfall. He started mentioning things like, I was talking to ABC Radio and they have some interest. I was thinking, no you don't. ABC is owned by Disney. They don't want someone who sent photos of his boner to a teenage girl. Don't try to bargain with lies. I knew that no one wanted this guy. We were psyched about having him on Compound Media until he was sentenced to jail. When he gets out, if he wants a job, he's got it. We're like that old loan company. When everyone else says no, we say yes. Keith and I have been thinking we could use a liberal voice on our network, even if it is Anthony Weiner. Actually, even better if it is Anthony Weiner embroiled in controversy. That's what we're about. We're so pro-freedom of speech, why not let the guy talk? If he has something to say, I don't care what he did. He still has the right to express his opinions. When he's done being incarcerated, he's most likely fucked. Who's going to hire someone who was sentenced sending illicit sexual material to a minor? This guy. Talk about second chances. Anthony Acumia will give you a third, fourth, and fifth chance. We'll see.